Hi everybody, welcome back for another round of Pokemon Cube action. I'm Ben Grove here bringing you the December Pokemon TCG Cube League Discord's Cube League. This time around we're drafting Finimation's X Standard Cube. If you want to follow along with the action, check out the links down below in the description to join the Discord and follow along with more Cube happenings. If you're brand new to checking out Pokemon Cube, first of all, what is a Cube Draft? A Cube Draft is a customized set of cards that are put together for the express purpose of drafting with a group of players and building decks from. So you can see here in the picture, I've included that this is from my personal in real life cube that is mostly based around Pokemon from the Gen 4 Heart Gold Soul Silver Prime era, but has a healthy smattering of trainer cards from all across Pokemon's history. You can also see there's a lot of really cool cards that are just normally not interacting with each other. We've got Quick Search Pidgeot back from Fire Red and Leaf Green. We've got a Vivillon that accelerates energy. We've got a cool Gardevoir that doubles the amount of psychic energy in play. So a lot of really unique interactions, and that's really what makes Cube so fun. It's what really has drawn me to it, is playing around with cards that don't normally interact with each other and kind of seeing how they interact and really putting all of your skills as a Pokemon player to the test. So that's what's Cube Draft, and that's what keeps me playing it. This time around, we are drafting the X Standard Cube, and this cube is high-powered. There's a lot of really powerful cards from probably the last 5 or so years of Pokemon, and it's a hyper-consistent cube and hyper-powerful. You can see the Phantom Transformation Zoroark, Vileplume GX, which has 2 for 180, which is really powerful. And this Porygon Z GX, also another really powerful card. This is going to be a big change from the cards that we were using in Coin Flip Cube. Now, Coin Flip Cube, we got to use a lot of really cool cards in new ways, but a lot of the cards were from E-card era, so Aquapolis, Skyridge, sets from way back. But really, we're not going any further back than Sun and Moon era with these cards, which is going to be a totally different experience. Also, an experience I'm not that great with. So this cube is definitely going to be a lot more of a challenge for me than Coin Flip Cube was. Coin Flip Cube was really one of my best cubes that I do the best at, but we're gonna see how I do around this time, and it might be a little interesting. My deck might be a little scuffed, so enjoy the jank with me, I think is the key word for me. One thing that I'm gonna have to really put myself in when drafting this is putting myself in the mentality of this particular cube, which has 720 cards in it, and it's high power, very consistent. I put Cynthia, Professor's Research, and Ultra Ball on the screen here, mainly because there are 8 of each of those in this cube. That just kind of gives you an idea of how consistent decks can be when you probably have a good chance to get multiple Ultra Ball, multiple Cynthia, multiple Research, or multiple cards that are on a similar power level to them. So I have to make sure when I'm drafting that I'm going to be able to build a deck that's going to be hyper consistent and execute a consistent strategy, be attacking turn 2, turn 3 out of the gate every single game, barring any weird bricks. If you remember back to my Coin Flip Cube deck, if I didn't get started going until turn 4 or turn 5, if I missed the turn 1 benching of a Swablu for my Altaria deck, it wasn't the biggest deal in the world. Sure, it was not ideal, but we could recover. In this cube, we really want to just get going out of the gate and get going really consistently. Additionally, the number, especially if you're coming from a different card game that does cube, 720 cards. 720 cards is even high for Pokemon standards. And in Pokemon Cube, the cubes have to be so big because you have to draft a full line of Pokemon. If you're playing a Kingdra line, you need a Horsey, you need a Seadra, you need a Kingdra. So it is a very big cube. That also just kind of puts the onus on you as a drafter. You've got so many picks that you just need to make everyone count so that your 60 cards that you bring in your deck are just going to be executing a strategy and a game plan the same way every single game. You can kind of see I've pulled up a couple different sample deck lists of previous decks that really did well in this cube. They both happen to be from Slight here, but the deck it's very creative, and it's using a lot of different lines that are kind of powerful, but it's got a lot of powerful trainer cards backing things up. We've got two Colress, Cynthia, Sinlin, Judge, Leon, which is great in cubes, Marnie, Anne, Research, Tate and Liza, 3 Evo Incense, Calm, Quickball, Ultra Ball. A lot of powerful consistency options. That kind of irons out the fact that you've got a whole bunch of different attacking lines. Also, Phantom Transformation, Zoroark does, because they're all stage 1s as well. So all that kind of is also glued together by some really good consistency Pokemon. We got a Babero, we've got Oran Guru, and you'll also see this is like really low number of energy for a cube deck. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 energy total. In my Dragon deck from Coin Flip Cube, I think I was running 14 energy. So energy attachments are going to really count, but you're going to have to like just have the really good consistency that you're going to guarantee it, because you got to pack your deck with a ton of good stuff. This is another deck from Slight in this cube, and you can also see like this one is probably based around the Rainbow Force Xerneas. You can see there's so many multicolored Pokemon in this deck, but it's a lot of like multicolored consistency Pokemon. Magcargo, Lapras, Uxie, Alolan Ninetales GX, which this particular Alolan Ninetales is not in the cube anymore. Backup Porygon 2. Tons of consistency, and then a couple really good attackers to go along with that. So that's the kind of mentality I want to put myself in. Cards I'm going to value highly to do that, I've kind of outlined like on this slide, just like maybe a sample of like what I want my deck to be, like the game plan I want my deck to be executing. So we've got Metal Link's Bronzong. That's a great energy acceleration piece. It's going to guarantee that I have attackers going back to back to back, because knockouts are going to be flying fast in this cube. So we're guaranteeing attackers back to back to back. We've got Babero as a consistency engine, and a big basic attacker, something like this Dialga from Celebrations. These basically styles of cards and different engines and different attackers, these are the kinds of cards that I'm going to be looking for to build a deck around. Not necessarily these guys, because there's obviously a lot of other similar cards to it. Like there's Dynamotor Flaffy is basically the same thing as Bronzong. You could do, I think there's Magcargo instead of Babero. But basically you want consistency engine, you want an energy acceleration engine, and you want big attackers that can do a lot of damage and have a big body, but probably be on a basic, so they're easy to set up. Those are the kinds of things that are probably going to be build-arounds for a successful deck. Now, the cards I have on here, they're all basically one color, but the really cool thing I think about this cube is that you'll notice is that the cards in here, like, there's a lot of flexibility, I think, with different archetypes that you could combine. You could potentially just throw this Metal Link's Bronzong into a deck that isn't necessarily all metal, but just like has enough colorless requirements and attacks, and you're just facilitating its use with the right other kinds of energy in your deck, and it's just like a good support piece for you. So these are the kinds of like archetypes of cards that I'm going to try and put together to really have a successful draft. Now, there are not as many archetypes in this cube as some other cubes are out there, but I'll highlight a couple different things that I think are probably going to be really strong in a draft that I might try and take a look for. Number one, up here in the middle, Phantom Transformation Zoroark. I was kind of highlighting how this cube there's a lot of room to play around with flexibility. There's probably nothing more flexible than Phantom Transformation Zoroark. It can go into your consistency engine. You can transform it into a Babero. You can transform it into an attacker. You can transform it into an energy accelerating engine. And a card like this is really just like a backbone of some really cool ideas. So I think it's a really cool card to include in your cubes. I would definitely be excited to play some Phantom Transformation for sure. And also, you'll notice that most of the cards on this archetype set I think are strong are stage ones. A couple basics in here, but yeah. Banette GX, just an example of a stage one that swings for consistent damage for a cheap cost. Never can go wrong with something like this. I think Banette's going to be really strong. You're going to have a lot of really powerful options to dump your hand full of supporters, to build up a shadow chant, and start swinging for 100 damage for 1 energy really quickly. So cards like Banette GX, there's a couple of them in this cube. I think Banette is a really strong card to include in decks. I also think I'm intrigued by spread in this cube. The spread package is interesting, and there's a lot of things that do pretty good value for a low price. This Miss Magius with Eerie Voice, put 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon, is a decent spreading attack. But then on top of that, you've got the ability that it has, which is also basically like a bursting balloon on steroids, just for getting knocked out, and you probably will get knocked out at 90 HP. So I do really think that there's some room for some spread options to do well in this cube, and kind of will relate into later on when I'm talking about control options as well. There's plenty of cards to facilitate comeback potential. So you're going to be rewarded in draft if you're drafting some spread stuff that can take advantage of comeback cards as well. One interesting thing is that there's 2 flying flip Tapu Koko, which are great, but there are no double colorless energy. There's only double turbo, which does make flying flip to a big fat 0. So Tapu Koko is not as strong in this. So even though it's a great spread tool, even if I'm on spread, I might not consider it as highly. But yeah. Down here in the middle, I have Naganadel here as a representation for Ultra Beasts in general. I think Naganadel is probably the strongest of them because it's not only a energy accelerating engine, but it's also a pretty strong attacker in its own right. The Ultra Beasts in here, they're just really easy to achieve their prize-based condition. And so they'll just randomly get, like, on random points in the game, they just randomly get buffed up. I know that the Buzzwole, the Baby Buzz is in this cube, and, like, it was a great card in Standard, and I think, like, it also just gets really great value in here. Just being able to do 120 damage. This Naganadel with Turning Point that can do 160 at the right time. There's just the Ultra Beast in here can be well enabled, and there's something that everybody, I think, is going to have to play around in their matches no matter what happens. Additionally, this Xerneas here, Rainbow Force Xerneas, really cool card. Because your decks are probably going to be multicolor, I think this Xerneas is going to be a really powerful guy. Does 10 damage plus 30 more damage for each different type of Pokemon on your bench. And there are a couple Skyfield in here, I believe. So a lot of different ways to enable that, just based on building a multicolored deck for sure. And the Xerneas on here is also just like representative archetypes I think are strong for just having big basic attackers that are getting good value. There's tons of those in this cube. You definitely need to have those in your deck. Lastly, I think control is really well enabled in this cube. There are tons of control options, even down to like cards that are good control cards but are like you don't always see them in a normal cube. Like this cube has 4 crushing hammer. I normally you don't see 4 crushing hammer in a cube, but like a control deck could really make use of something like that. There's tons of ways to enable a really controlling play style, and control I think can be really dangerous for sure. And so if I'm finding myself with a lot of control cards coming my way open, I'll probably pivot towards that for sure. Now, by the same token, a couple traps to avoid. Control is definitely a trap to avoid for me. I am not a control player by any stretch of the imagination, and in fact, like, I prefer when I'm playing Pokemon decks, I prefer to just play stage 1, rush down, just like really aggressive decks that are going to take over the game and take it over early, and just like leave the figuring out how am I going to come back, how am I going to win this game, like leave that kind of stuff to my opponent for sure. So control definitely can be a trap if you're not prepared to build a control deck, because it's not necessarily a usual cube experience. So personally, that will hold me back a little bit from playing a control deck. Now, if all of the control stuff is just coming to me and it's the best option, you better believe I'm gonna figure it out. Like I'm gonna try and play it. But I think if you're not prepared, you can end up with a really shaky control draft for sure. Another couple cards on this on my slide of traps to avoid, I think the Blaziken and Dragonite. Now these are great cards that well enable their strategies, and this Blaziken also gets kind of a great spread card. The trap that I see with them is there's only one of each of those. So even if you're somebody that has grabbed like the Blaziken GX or the Dragonite GX, and you've grabbed a lot of those pieces early, you're not really safe in that draft until you find a Fire Starter or until you find a Hurricane Charge. Because if you end up playing a Blaziken deck with no Fire Starter, that's a real feels bad moment. So if I'm gonna go down these roads, I have to have this guy. Like that has to be like that will convince me to play a Blaziken deck. Just grabbing having 2 Blaziken GX wheeled around to me early on in the draft does not convince me that I'm going to play a Blaziken deck. I need to have the Fire Starter. Same thing with Dragonite for Hurricane Charge. And then a couple other of these traps that I've got on here. Very interestingly, this Yanmega is a trap because the Yanmega Break isn't in here, and the normal Yanmega doesn't have enough damage on it, I think, to be relevant. Sonic Vision is a great ability that when paired with a Breaks attack makes it really useful because you just get 100 damage for free. That's great, but if there's no break in this cube, it doesn't really make Yanmega worth it to me. Gumshoes I don't think does enough damage either. It's a big body, but it's not getting the job done in the damage department. Like a lot of big basic attackers are just going to swallow up that damage, and I don't think it seems that it's going to be valuable. Finally, unfortunately, this Rabsca. I think Rabsca is a really cool card with Revival Blessing, where you get to put a Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench. But in this cube, that's a little slow. And I talked earlier about how I think consistency is going to be key, and being able to quickly and consistently execute a game plan with your deck. I think if you're evolving into Rabsca stage 2 or turn 2 to put say you're cheating a Hurricane Charge Dragonite into play on turn 3, you could have just put the Dragonite into play naturally and probably had a more consistent deck, and you're not giving up a prize with this Rabsca because it only has 70 HP. So while we played the cheat something into play deck last time, it was from the deck, not the discard pile, and that guy had more HP in a lower power leveled cube. So I don't think Rabsca cuts it here. Really cool card. There's got to be a cube out there somewhere for it, but I don't think this one is it. Moving on to some final thoughts here. My final thoughts are just I'm kind of excited. I think this cube is an interesting one that is going to challenge our league in ways that we haven't been challenged before. It's a new Cube League one for us. Most of some of us have played it, but it's new for the Cube League. So it's going to be definitely a new challenge, and I'm excited for that challenge. I'm excited to see how I do in a high power cube. High power is not my specialty, so it could be jank, and we could get a draft video that is, hey, here's what not to do in a Pokemon draft. I don't think it will be, but could be. Anyway, I'm really excited to keep the Pokemon Cube content coming. After this pre-draft tactics video, you'll also get to see my draft perspective, drafting from that, and then my final deck, and then after that, we'll get into the Swiss rounds, and you'll get to see me battling it out against all the other decks, and hopefully making top cuts, like I did last time around in Coin Flip Cube. If you want to follow along with that and support my Pokemon Cube content making journey, I also have got a Patreon going, so subscribing to that is basically what that's representative of, is trying to help the Pokemon Cube community grow the content for Cube out there. I play Standard occasionally, but Cube is really what keeps me into Pokemon. It's what interests me and what is kind of my passion here, and I want to share it with you. If you want to come along for the ride, I'd love for you to join up on my Patreon as well. Finally, just if you haven't already, check out the Coin Flip Cube draft and gameplay video for all those rounds. I really had a great time in Coin Flip Cube. You can't go wrong if you win the cube. Spoiler alert! But I think there's some really great content there for everybody to check out if you haven't already. But yeah, looking forward to checking out the draft and the gameplay to follow.